history of literacy. And I'm going to do something where you folks get to pick my slides. I'm not going to know what slides I'm going to do ahead of time, mainly because lectures are boring, so we figure out new ways. So I just need a word. Somebody give me a word. Think about Mad Libs. We're going to do lecture Mad Libs right now. I just need a word. Don't overthink. Like a word, a noun is easier. What? London, did you say? London. Is that what I didn't hear what you said the first time? Oh, run? I like run better. We'll go with the verb. I would have been hard pressed to do this with London. So let me just share my screen real fast. Oh, let me get it started. Share screen while my time's running. So, when we think about the forward leap that humanity has made around literacy, we have raised the bar every time. And we're thinking back to, really it's hard to separate the birth of literacy from the birth, and I'm using when did we start encoding meaning into symbols. Because there were other scaffolds, other ladders available before we started doing that helped us along this journey. And it would point the way, much like cave paintings or much like the oral traditions. So literacy itself goes back as far as language. But Godspeed believed you could not even separate thought and language, that they're the same. But something happened that got us really through the dark, where suddenly those oral traditions, those were passed down through memories. But we were able to run into a new experience, where we created this concept of an external storage device, where suddenly your trail, your path, you can record it. That's a fundamental shift in human history. And children will always learn language. You will always, just like play, you learn how to speak. As long as you're around somebody else, another situation, language comes naturally. Writing and reading take explicit instruction in how to do it. And it is a technological advance. We did leap forward into space once we began to record writing. What happened? Well, we learned agriculture. And suddenly, you had extra food. I'm way simplifying things, but you had, I need to figure out some way to record how much wheat I have. So, it was kind of like a looks like a duck, sounds like a duck kind of thing. Let me start writing this stuff down. And writing was born. But we know that there's not just one kind of duck. And writing really began to evolve pretty quickly. Over, that cuneiform and that paper, that had a pretty long run. I mean, it was like the domesticated cat, which is probably the #1, hunter in the world is a domesticated cat, one could argue. Might say viruses. But probably the domesticated cat as a great hunter. And that's what really happened. It was like, how do you get from going from a cat speed to race car speed with literacy? And what happened was a printing press. About, and then yes, the Chinese did invent typing, the removable type before Gutenberg did. But about 800 years ago, this dude said, hey, you know what? I can take this Bible and print out a bunch of them. And he started cranking them out. I mean, and it was, but these literacy symbols survived. Nike, anybody know what Nike is? Victory. Greek goddess of victory. So here, we still have these ancient symbols that influence our meaning making today. There's a Greek god of victory who became one of the biggest brand recognition. We know what the swoop means. Every runner knows what that swoop means. So what made us go from the printing press to Nike? And that is the evolution of this class. Because that took 800 years. And like running, towards the finish line, things started speeding up. Then we invented, say, in the, just emerging from this lake was this idea of the micropod, the computer, or the typewriter per se, in the 1800s, I think, was typewriter. So for about 1,000 years, the printing press had a good run. Then the typewriter came in. And then the typewriter lasted for about 150 years. Then something new came up the hill. Trampling up that hill was the word processor in the computer. All right? So, and then out goes the typewriter, just like that. So think about that. 800 years for the printing press, 150 years for the typewriter. Now we have this raging inferno called the computer that blasted onto the scenes in the 60s and 70s. And suddenly there was, the word processor came out and replaced the typewriter. New technologies for literacy were replacing the least efficient ones. A new raging inferno has broken out, and now anybody can be a writer. If the printing press democratized reading, where it put the books in many hands, the computer has democratized writing. Where every one of you is now a published writer in this room. You each have a blog. You each have something to say. Like this kid on a journey, we don't know where you're going, but you're definitely moving forward. And the same thing is happening with our literacy technologies. We are a new herd. We are a new breed when it comes to this idea of us replacing new technologies. Because the web is now about 25 years old? 2 decades. So basically the web is older than you, most of you. I did go with most. But that's new horizon. That's like you're going out into like a brand new sunset where you're the first generation that's been alive for the entire web. And that changes things. Because remember how the printing press replaced the paper, or the cuneiform, and the computer, and the word press, they replace that? Well, now it's more modular. You just add on extra features until you have literacy that is almost unrecognizable. Because Facebook coexists with Snapchat, which coexists with Instagram, which coexists with Telegram. All these new tools for technology are emerging every day. New tools every single day. You're just like building on these monitors. And users are left to hunt and peck around me. Because we have an explosion of information. And then it's really hard to go through the grass and find the true value. So where do we as a society, this is what Dana Boyd talks about, that we have these cascading identities and cascading circles, and we have to find our own way through the flow. And that's why we have a class stream. Is how do you flow through the stream of internet and literacy technologies that exist today? And Boyd talks about this idea of collapsing context, and this idea that when you're spinning you, because there's multiple me's, the way that you act in this class is not the same way you act in your Call of Duty when you're talking to everybody with your headset. So you spin your identities a little bit more. And it's like skateboarding. You know a skater, right? They're walking down the hall. And you see them dressed that way, you know who that person is. Because literacy isn't just the tools we use, it's the identities that we have, it's how we dress, it's how we act. We signify our identities in culture all the time. And those identities change based on literacy practices. So that was 800 years of literacy in 5 minutes and 40 seconds. So that was pretty much today's lecture. I try to keep the lectures down to almost a bare minimum. All right.